Back in college, I came into a little money and decided to sponsor a struggling actor who had amnesia. I toyed with him like he was my pet. Then the money ran out, and I kicked him to the curb without a second thought. We met again at a corporate gala. I was a nobody, a D-list actress. He, with his memory restored, was Frank, the young heir of the powerful Liu family. He was on the arm of his fiancée, an award-winning actress, giving an interview. "Frank, we hear you've been searching for the person who took you in during your amnesia. Are you planning to thank them generously?" A small smile touched his lips, but his voice was ice cold. "Oh, yes. Generously. As long as she can handle it." Right before the gala started, my agent got a call. "The organizers want you to change your dress. If you don't, you can't attend." I was already dressed and ready to go. I froze. "Sarah is here tonight, and your dress is the same color as hers. She's not happy. Sarah and I are the same age, but she got her start way earlier and has already won awards. She's the hottest new actress in the business. I'm just a nobody, a background actress with zero clout to challenge her. I was only at this gala to network and find work. The last thing I wanted to do was piss off Sarah. So I did as I was told and changed. I didn't have another gown, so I had to make do with a simple dress. By the time I arrived, the place was already crowded. People were whispering. Sarah is here with her fiancé, Frank. That young heir is the one calling all the shots at the Liu Corporation now. I heard he was kicked out of the family 5 years ago and even lost his memory. Sarah stuck by him through it all." Suddenly, someone gasped, "It's Frank and Sarah." I went rigid, my head snapping up instinctively. The main doors swung open, and a familiar figure came into view. My mind went blank. It had been 4 years, and Frank was a completely different person. His once slender frame was now tall and imposing, perfectly fitted in a custom-tailored suit. And his eyes, which used to look at me with such gentle innocence, were now sharp and cold. Sarah was on his arm, and they were surrounded by a pack of reporters. "Frank, this seems to be your first public appearance with Ms. Miller. Does this mean we'll be hearing wedding bells soon?" Frank's expression didn't change. He answered coolly. "Do you entertainment reporters have anything better to ask about than my private life?" It was common knowledge in the industry. After what happened back then, Frank despised everything about showbiz, especially reporters. Besides Sarah, he didn't have a kind word for anyone. The reporter, rebuffed, didn't dare get angry and quickly changed the subject. "We hear you've recently been looking for the person who took you in when you had amnesia. Are you planning on rewarding them?" The smile on Sarah's face faded slightly. "Heh." A small smile touched Frank's lips, but his voice was ice cold. "Oh, yes. A reward. As long as she can handle it." He called it a reward. But everyone could hear the chill in his voice. My mind was racing. I took 2 steps back and bumped right into someone's wine glass. The cold, wet liquid soaked the back of my dress. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm so sorry, so sorry." I bowed repeatedly, apologizing. When I finally turned back around, a mess, my eyes met Frank's. Maybe it was my imagination, but I thought I saw a flicker of contempt in his gaze. My eyes suddenly stung, and I quickly looked down, flustered. For some reason, my mind flashed back to 4 years ago. To so many humid, passionate nights. The bedroom light was dim, steam from the bathroom filling the air. Frank was on top of me, his eyes fixed on my face no matter how we moved. I bit my lip and lightly slapped his cheek, a little punishment. "What are you looking at? Keep staring and I'll gouge your eyes out." His gentle movements became fiercer. But the way he looked at me was still innocent, as if through a haze. "I can't remember anything, so I just want to look a little longer. I want to remember your face." When I snapped out of it, Frank had already looked away. I deliberately moved away from him. Clutching a stack of business cards I'd printed, I started searching for potential contacts. I hadn't landed a role in 3 months. My agent had even privately asked me if I'd offended someone. I had a suspicion, but I didn't dare say who. We had just agreed that I should get out more and look for opportunities. Tonight's gala was a big deal, with plenty of directors and investors in attendance. If someone liked my acting, even a small role would be a blessing. I had just finished schmoozing with a director when a long, slender hand appeared in front of me. Without thinking, I handed over a business card, starting my spiel as I looked up. "Hi, my name and number are on here. If you scan the QR code, you can see all my previous." When I saw the face in front of me, my voice died in my throat. Frank didn't take my card. My hand just hung there, awkwardly in midair. He acted like he didn't notice, just staring at me. His eyes scanned the name on my card, and he read it out, syllable by syllable, Crystal Lynn. My heart leaped into my throat. He just said my name and nothing more. I couldn't help but think about when the Liu family found him and took him to the hospital. I'd rushed over, but his mother stopped me outside the room. "Mississippi Lynn, my son's memory is in a delicate recovery phase." She tossed a check for $300,000 at me. Her tone was flat, but it carried a clear warning. "The doctors say this has been an unpleasant time for him. After his memories restructure, he will most likely forget all of this. I don't want you disturbing him again. Do you understand? It was better if he forgot." After all, the head of the Liu family had been toyed with like a dog by some greedy, promiscuous woman during his lowest point. For him, it could only mean humiliation and shame. As the silence became unbearable, I was about to pull my hand back. But Sarah stepped in, plucked the card from my fingers, and nonchalantly tore it in half. She smiled. "This is a gala, not some street corner where you hand out flyers." My eyes fell on her. She was wearing a sea blue mermaid gown, the hem adorned with tassels and sparkling rhinestones. Sea blue was my favorite color. As my former classmate and best friend, Sarah knew that perfectly well. I pressed my lips together and apologized softly. "I'm sorry, I haven't had a role in a long time. I was just hoping to find an opportunity here." "Mississippi Lynn, if you're not getting roles, it means your acting isn't good enough. You should be focused on improving your craft, not trying to social climb at events like this." She looked at me, a smile still on her lips, but her tone was pointed. "A person should have some self-respect." Noisy. Frank, who had been silent, suddenly cut her off. The smile on Sarah's face froze. After a few seconds, she forced another smile. "You're still not used to these events, are you? Too noisy. I get it, you meet all sorts of people here." As she spoke, her gaze cut through me like a knife. "Let's just go home." Frank didn't answer. His face was a mask of clear annoyance as he turned to leave. But then he stopped, turned back, and looked at me. "Your card." I blinked, then quickly fumbled for another business card and handed it to him. "Thank you, Frank. If there are any audition opportunities, you can call the number on here. I'm available 24/7. Frank completely ignored me. With a cold expression, he finally made his escape from the party he so clearly hated. Frank has always hated these things. The only reason he'd show up is to boost Sarah's profile, right? After the party, I went backstage to change. A few people nearby were gossiping. "Definitely. I heard the Liu family invested in director Vance's new film, the one he's hoping will win awards. The lead actress is almost certainly going to be Sarah. I also heard they're getting engaged after the movie wraps." The spilled wine on my back had dried, leaving a faint yellow stain on the cheap fabric. I took off the dress, balled it up, and threw on a t-shirt before heading out. I was standing on the curb, trying to hail a cab. My agent texted me. I did some digging. A few years ago, there was a power struggle in the Liu family. Frank had an accident, lost his memory, and ended up on the streets. Some shady agency tricked him into signing an ironclad contract. Thankfully, Sarah paid to get him out of it, hid him at her place, and kept him out of a lot of trouble. Later, Frank wandered off and was taken in by someone for a short time. That person recognized him from the huge reward the Liu family was offering and tried to return him for the money. But by a stroke of luck, the family feud had just ended. When Frank went back, his memory returned, and he gradually took control of the Liu Corporation. So that was his new, restructured memory. It had nothing to do with me. My agent continued, Sarah and Frank are the real deal, love forged in hardship. Whatever you do, don't cross her. If she gets you blacklisted, I can't save you. For an actress at my level, my agent had plenty of other clients. The fact that she even gave me this much attention was rare. I replied that I understood. When I looked up, a black Bentley was parked by the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Frank's cool, aristocratic face. Mississippi Lynn, he said. We meet again. I instinctively glanced inside the car, looking for Sarah. But she wasn't there. What are you looking for? He asked suddenly. I answered without thinking. Is your fiancé not with you? Mississippi Lynn, are you very concerned about my personal life? Frank looked at me, a slight curve to his lips that wasn't a smile. His eyes were cold. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Realizing I'd probably annoyed him, I apologized quickly. With his power, getting me blacklisted would take nothing more than a word. He ignored my apology and opened the car door, stepping out onto the sidewalk. He looked down at me. Get in. I froze. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't you say you were available 24/7? Are you taking me to an audition? Frank let out a soft laugh. What else? Did you think I had some other reason for seeking you out, Mississippi Lynn? I would never assume such a thing, I said quickly. Thank you, Frank, for giving me this opportunity. I'll be sure to repay you. Maybe it was just my imagination. But when I said that, a flash of disappointment seemed to cross his eyes. I sat awkwardly in Frank's Bentley. I kept a foot of space between us, careful not to cross the line. The air was thick with tension when he spoke again. You're certainly very polite now, Mississippi Lynn. And so well-tempered. His tone was laced with faint sarcasm. I whipped my head around to meet his deep, ocean-like eyes. My throat tightened with nerves. What do you mean? He seemed to realize his slip of the tongue, looking down without another word. The car fell silent. A faint citrus scent drifted over from him, and I found myself lost in thought, remembering the past. I used to be anything but polite, and my temper was terrible. Especially with him. During the 6 months we were together, I put him through a lot. One day, he came to pick me up from a school event. As I was leaving the auditorium, I saw him at the entrance, talking to a female classmate. I don't know what they said, but she was looking up at him, her face bright red. My expression instantly turned cold. When we got home, I laid into him. Have you forgotten your place? How dare you flirt with people outside? Kneel. Frank's eyelashes fluttered. He spread his legs and obediently knelt before me. After extensive training, he had become very good at pleasing me. He brought his head forward, his cheek rubbing softly against the palm of my hand, before disappearing under the hem of my skirt. I braced myself against the sofa behind me, tilting my head back, consumed by the overwhelming pleasure and the citrus scent that radiated from him. In moments like this, Frank would show a hint of his defiant side. He would wrap his arm around my waist, pressing me more firmly against his lips and tongue. I trembled, no longer having the energy to scold him. Just before my consciousness drifted away, I heard his hoarse voice. Don't be angry, master. Get out. My wandering thoughts were violently pulled back by a voice right next to me. I turned my head and saw Frank looking at me, a strange expression on his face. You're blushing. I'm sorry. His face darkened. Crystal, I don't like hearing you apologize. Times had changed. My sharp edges and inappropriate temper had long since been worn smooth. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Frank took me to a high-end private club. The elevator ascended smoothly. When he pushed open the door to a private room, I was shocked to see the multiple award-winning director Vance. He greeted Frank casually, then turned his gaze to me. Is this the newcomer you mentioned? Frank nodded and walked in, taking a seat wherever. Pull out the roles for your new film. Let her pick one. The casual way he said it made my eyes twitch. I quickly interjected, I'm not picky. Any role is fine. I'd be honored just to be in one of your films. Director Vance sized me up for a moment, then, without another word, handed me a script outline. Take a look, see if there's a character you like. Of course, this doesn't mean you get the part. You'll still have to audition with everyone else. I nodded. I understand. Oh, and the female lead is taken. That's already been decided, he said, his eyes drifting toward Frank, who was drinking on the other side of the room. Right? Frank's face was cold. You talk too much. Rumor had it that Frank hated people discussing his private life, especially his relationship with Sarah. If the paparazzi hadn't caught them together several times, making them a trending topic, their relationship would have probably never been made public. I admit, a pang of bitterness shot through me. But I quickly suppressed it and focused on the script. The role I ended up choosing to audition for was the fourth female lead. It wasn't a huge part, and the character was a villain who had been disfigured, so the competition wouldn't be too fierce. It also suited my acting ability. More importantly, if I was going to be in the same film as Sarah, she would probably enjoy seeing me play a supporting role to her, and she wouldn't have Frank get me blacklisted. As for Frank. Suddenly, he stood up and stepped out to take a call. I caught a glimpse of the name flashing on his screen, Sarah. Just like that, I snapped out of my momentary, unrealistic fantasy. Did you two know each other before? After Frank left, Director Vance leaned in and asked. He was a prodigy who had won an international award for his debut film at 17. Even now, loaded with accolades, he was only in his early 20s, still young. His face was alight with pure gossip. I hesitated. Not really. He made a scoffing sound, clearly not believing me. Was he always such a stiff? No, he wasn't. When I first brought him home, Frank was like a pitiful, obedient puppy. His memory was a blank slate, so he had to listen to everything I said. The few times he showed a flicker of his spoiled rich kid attitude, would shut it down with an even worse attitude. All these thoughts flashed through my mind, but all I did was shake my head. We really don't know each other well. Ah. Hearing his disappointed sigh, I blurted out, shouldn't you be asking Sarah about Frank's personal life? Director Vance frowned, giving me a strange look. Sarah? Why would I ask her? Before he could finish, the door to the room opened. Frank stood there, staring at us, his tone sharp. Why are you two sitting so close? I moved away, putting some distance between myself and the director. We were just talking. What's there to talk about? He walked over and stood in front of me, looking down at me. You've picked a role. I have something else to do, so I'll take you home. I was about to decline, but his next words stopped me. I brought you here, after all. If something happened to you on the way, I could be held responsible. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Frank's face and countless fragments of our time together. In my junior year, I won $150,000 on a scratch-off ticket. Sarah was my good friend. She was a drama major and was already getting some acting roles. She took me to one of her industry parties. That's where I saw Frank, being pushed around by his agency. They were trying to make him drink with clients. Frank refused and was shoved by a couple of security guards. You're a cast-off from the Liu family. Stop acting like you're still some young master. He stumbled and fell, his head hitting the sharp corner of a coffee table. Blood immediately started to flow. His eyes were filled with confusion. Under the lights, the bright red of the blood made his pale skin look even more beautiful and fragile. A wave of protectiveness washed over me. Ignoring Sarah's protests, I paid $20,000 to buy out his contract. The agency had made it difficult, stipulating that if he didn't earn $10,000 a month for them, he'd have to pay double in damages. "I'll cover the money for you." That night, in the dimly lit room, I straddled his lap, looking down at him. "You don't have to please the agency or those investors. You just have to please me." I was 21 that year. I came from a good family, life was easy, and I just had a windfall. So I was spoiled, arrogant, and thought I knew everything. Frank had amnesia and was injured, lying in bed like a fragile glass doll. But all I could think about was how to get the most out of this expensive toy I'd bought. The first night was not pleasant. Frank hurt me, and I slapped him, calling him useless. The slap turned his head to the side. He hung his head and said nothing. I knew I'd gone too far, but I was too proud to apologize. So I blustered, "Don't you play the victim with me. I paid good money." Before I could finish, he leaned in and kissed me, a little clumsily. "Does this make it better?" "I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this." "I'll learn, master." Frank was a fast learner, and very obedient. A month later, he knew how to kiss every inch of my body, memorizing every sensitive spot. Less than 2 months later, he learned to wait for me by the door in a semi-transparent apron when I came home from class if I was in a bad mood. The longer we were together, the clingier he became, unable to bear being apart from me for long. One day, it was pouring rain. I came home late, and my phone had died. The moment I opened the door, I was pulled into a searing embrace. "I don't remember anything. My whole world is you. I'll work hard to pay you back. I'll do whatever you say, whatever you want, just, please don't leave me. Crystal, don't leave me." Unfortunately, I broke my promise. The day of the audition, the studio was packed with stars. My acting was self-taught, far from top tier, but I somehow landed the role. Even my agent was surprised. She did some digging. "Apparently, Director Vance personally chose you. He said you perfectly captured the character's journey from a spoiled princess to a disfigured fisherwoman, that sense of utter despair." Seeing my dazed look, she nudged me with her elbow. "What's wrong? Spacing out again?" "Director Vance wanted me to tell you that the kickoff press conference is in a week. It's going to be live streamed, so be on time." I snapped back to reality. "Okay." I went downstairs to head home. An unfamiliar Rolls-Royce slowed down and pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Frank's face. I took a deep breath and forced a polite smile. "New car, Frank?" He ignored the question and got out. "Mississippi Lynn, congratulations on getting the role you wanted." I tried to figure out what he meant by that, cautiously thanking him. "I should be thanking you, Frank. It had nothing to do with me. I just provided a fair audition opportunity. You won the role entirely on your own merit." Frank looked at me. "Vance told me everything. You were great. You're very talented, Crystal." He said my name with such gravity, his gaze so intense it felt like it could burn me. I quickly looked down at my shoes, avoiding his eyes. "Thank you, Frank." Because I wasn't looking up, I thought I heard a faint sigh, but I dismissed it as my imagination. "Why did you get into acting?" My head shot up. "What?" Frank continued, "I saw your resume. You studied art history, right? Why acting? This industry, it's not a great place." It wasn't a great place. But Sarah was in it, and he was head over heels for her. What right did he have to ask me that? I took a step back, a self-deprecating smile on my lips. Because I love money, I want to be famous, and I'm vain. Is that a good enough reason? For the next week, aside from a trip home, I spent nearly all my time studying the script and memorizing my lines. My part wasn't huge, but I also memorized everyone else's lines for the scenes I was in. That way, even when I wasn't speaking, I could react appropriately instead of just standing there like a prop. This was my first time working with such a major director, and I cherished the opportunity. Soon, it was the day of the live-streamed press conference. The number of viewers in the live stream quickly surpassed 1 million. The venue was packed. Besides the cast, investors, and reporters, a lot of fans showed up. However, the seat in the front row that was supposed to be for Frank was empty. The microphone was passed to me. A reporter I didn't recognize stood up to ask me a question. Mississippi Lynn, from what I understand, your acting is mediocre at best, and you've only played insignificant supporting roles. How is it that you're now playing the 4th female lead in director Vance's new film? What kind of underhanded tactics did you use? The room erupted in murmurs. I looked at him, my face impassive. I feel I should remind you that slander is a crime. Slander? A person like you who slept her way to the top has the nerve to talk about slander? He shouted. I have proof. Someone tugged on my dress. I turned. It was Sarah. She was holding her phone, looking at me with an expression of disbelief. There are photos and videos all over the trending topics. Mississippi Lynn, why would you do this? On her phone screen, the trending topic was clear. Crystal Lynn explicit photos leaked. Crystal Lynn unethical tactics. The image was of me in a revealing slip dress, smiling and toasting someone with a drink. There seemed to be even more explicit photos, but they were blurred out. Sarah stared at me inside. Crystal, I could tell that night. You're not much of an actress, but you're a master manipulator. Did you think sending those photos to Frank would seduce him? Do you think that's how he and I got together? I didn't want to say anything, but you sold him out for $300,000 back then. How can you have the nerve to come back now? The crowd started murmuring again. That's disgusting. How can a woman have no shame? So sleazy. I wonder how she got this role. We don't want to see morally corrupt people act. Blacklist her. Make her quit the industry. Amid the uproar, the main doors of the hall suddenly swung open. Frank, dressed in a sharp suit, strode in, his piercing gaze sweeping across the room. I looked up, meeting his eyes directly. Sarah suddenly leaned in close, whispering in my ear. You don't really think Frank is here to save you, do you? Why do you think we gave you this role? So we could catch you red-handed and utterly destroy you. Utterly destroy me? I'd been through that once before. I gave her a mocking smile, my eyes fixed on hers. Really? I think you'll find that's a little difficult. With that, I took a small recorder out of my pocket, held it up to the microphone, and pressed play. After a crackle of static, a slightly muffled conversation played out. Is this the newcomer you mentioned? Pull out the roles for your new film. Let her pick one. I'm not picky. Any role is fine. I'd be honored just to be in one of your films. Take a look, see if there's a character you like. Of course, this doesn't mean you get the part. You'll still have to audition with everyone else. I understand. In the sudden silence, I looked at Sarah, whose face had gone pale. You recognize your fiancé's voice, don't you? Does this prove I got my role through a proper audition? She was visibly flustered. That doesn't prove your other opportunities were legitimate. Everyone saw the photos online. Are you saying those are fake? Seeing my calm demeanor, she looked to Frank for help. Right, Frank? She used those things too. I followed her gaze to Frank. He looked at me. You recorded it. Yeah, I said. A habit. Self-preservation. Hope you understand. He suddenly smiled. Good. It's really good that you can protect yourself. The smile was fleeting, quickly replaced by a serious expression. I've been busy wrapping things up with my family's business. I was not aware of what she was planning today. You don't have to explain to me. I suppressed the storm of emotions inside me, trying to look at him calmly. Frank, I'm grateful that you recognize my talent and were willing to introduce me to Director Vance, giving me the chance to audition for this role. I'm also grateful that you're choosing to stand on the side of truth, despite your fiancé's lies. I'm just a nobody actress with average talent. I know my place. I just want to do my best in every role and have no other ambitions. Whatever is going on between you and your fiancé has nothing to do with me. The way most people in the room were looking at me had already changed. When someone willingly takes the low road, it often garners sympathy. Besides, I had the recording. It was irrefutable proof. I pressed my advantage, bowing to Frank. And please, help me clarify that we've only ever had a professional relationship. We've had no private contact. Is that so? He suddenly cut me off. You don't want the $150,000 you spent on me? And you don't want me anymore either? I froze. No, this couldn't be right. Everyone knew that when Frank was injured and lost his memory, he was cast out by his family. It was Sarah who paid to get him back, hiding him at her home to protect him from his old enemies. Later, Frank wandered off and was taken in by someone with ulterior motives. Once that person confirmed his identity, they turned him over to the Liu family for money. I shouldn't have been in his memory. Neither should that money. What $150,000? Frank, you must be mistaken, Sarah said quickly. When she returned you to your family, she took $300,000. And back then, nobody knew the reward for you had been called off. When she sold you out, she didn't care if you lived or died. Frank looked at her. If Crystal did all of this, how do you know the details so clearly, so confidently? Or could it be that the person behind all this was someone else entirely? Sarah's face went white. Frank ignored her and walked onto the stage, step by step. As he got closer, I could again smell that familiar citrus scent on him, mixed with a faint, almost imperceptible smell of iron. He took a shallow breath and pulled something from his suit pocket, holding it out to me. It was a protective charm wrapped in red cloth. The edges were worn, and there seemed to be a small hole in the middle that had been carefully stitched up. Do you remember this? He said softly. You said you hoped I would be safe and healthy. I am. But what about you, Crystal? What about you, Crystal? I stared at the charm, dumbfounded. It was like being pulled back into a memory from 4 years ago. During the time we were together, Frank would sometimes wake up from nightmares. He'd make so much noise that he'd wake me up too, and I'd slap him, annoyed. He never got angry. Instead, he would nuzzle up against me and smoothly begin his routine. My fault for waking you, master. Will this make up for it? Afterward, I came out of the bathroom after a shower. I saw him standing by the window, staring into the night, like a wisp of smoke that could dissipate at any moment. I thought about the malicious faces of those people when I first met him. I thought about the 2 prominent scars on his lower back that I'd felt when we were in bed. A sudden, inexplicable sense of unease washed over me. So, when I went to a temple with some classmates that weekend, I sought out the abbot and asked for a protective charm. He asked who it was for. I paused, and it took me a long time to say, my love. Was what Frank and I had love? I didn't know. I had spent my entire windfall on him and, in return, received 6 months of absolute pleasure. Our relationship was supposed to be a straightforward transaction of money and flesh, but somehow, something else had gotten mixed in. When I got home, I gave the charm to Frank. He clutched it tightly in his hand. After a long moment, he asked, "Didn't you get one for yourself?" "What would I need one for?" I said with a laugh. "I'm not like you. You have nothing. I have everything. My life has always been smooth sailing. I don't need protection from any gods." He looked at me. The sunlight streamed in through the window, illuminating one half of his face, while the other seemed steeped in darkness. After a moment, he shook his head and came to hug me. "I don't have nothing. I have you. And, you're all I have." He held me so tightly it almost hurt. Normally, I would have gotten angry. But maybe it was the atmosphere of that moment, the budding affection, that made me unable to push him away. A few days later, my mom called, and I went home for a visit. Before I left, I ran into Sarah downstairs. By then, she had already been in a few movies with decent roles and was starting to make a name for herself in the industry. She smiled and greeted me, then asked, "Crystal, did you know that Frank, the guy you bought 6 months ago, is now being sought by the Liu family for a huge reward?" I snapped back from my memories. Frank was still looking at me, his gaze unwavering. I forced a smile. "I'm doing pretty well for myself now." "Liar," he said softly. "Crystal, I remember everything. When we were together, you weren't like this." The press conference had descended into chaos. People love drama, and the number of viewers in the live stream was skyrocketing. The comments were flying. "What a show. I just saw someone confirm that the photos trending online were all photoshopped. Crystal Lynn is a total nobody. Who would go to such lengths to frame her? Isn't it obvious?" The answer is right there. Frank said he was with Crystal back then, so it's pretty clear who's been lying. Sarah really is a great actress. Talented and shameless. How could she pretend to be someone's savior for so long without feeling guilty? Wait, but this Frank guy is a joke too. Did amnesia fry his brain? How could he not recognize the person who saved him? The reporters, smelling blood, swarmed Sarah with their cameras and microphones. "Ms. Miller, who was it that really saved Frank? Did you deliberately mislead an amnesiac Frank into thinking it was you? Were your actions against Ms. Lynn today a result of a guilty conscience? Why would you spread slut-shaming rumors about a colleague?" She couldn't defend herself and looked pleadingly at Frank. "Frank, I've been by your side all these years." He cut her off. "You mean, siding with my mother to deceive me, taking advantage of my condition to alter my memories, and pushing me into the spotlight to serve your own interests? Is that what you call being by my side?" Frank took out his phone, flashed the screen at her, and smiled. "Unfortunately for you, she's already been taken in for questioning. You can go join her." I didn't know exactly what Sarah had done. But Frank's voice was calm and gentle, yet her face turned deathly pale. Still, she wouldn't give up. She trembled as she said, "Even so, is Crystal Lynn any better? Now that you have your memory back, you should know how she treated you." Frank looked at her, his smile mocking. "You seem to know quite a lot. Then how come you don't know that every single thing she did to me back then, I absolutely loved it?" Sarah's face turned to ash. I had said all I needed to say. Without another glance at her, I walked off the stage and went to the dressing room. Frank followed me silently. With just the two of us in the small dressing room, the citrus scent from him became even stronger. Citrus has always been my favorite scent. For years ago, when we were together, I always wore citrus perfume, and the diffusers in my apartment were citrus scented. And Frank. I suddenly remembered that from the first moment we met again after 4 years, there had always been a faint citrus scent about him. "When did you remember?" I sat at the vanity, taking off my earrings, and spoke without turning around. But in the mirror, I could see his face. His bright eyes, stripped of their cold exterior, were now fixed on me. We looked at each other through the mirror, through the 4 years that had passed. His eyelashes trembled, and he spoke softly. "When they first took me back, I was in a state of chaos. 20-some years of memories were flashing through my mind out of order. Faces would appear and disappear, but I couldn't tell who was who. Then my mother showed up with Sarah, telling me she was my savior. That she had taken care of me while I had amnesia. I didn't recognize Sarah, but I did remember some things from my childhood, enough to know that my mother couldn't be trusted. But I was powerless then. I had just returned to the family, didn't understand anything, and everything was thrown at me at once." Frank spoke, and I listened quietly without interrupting. After things stabilized, I still couldn't remember who Sarah was. But I started having dreams. In my dreams, someone would tell me she would never leave me. But I waited at home for her for a long time, and she never came back. He paused, glanced at my expression, and continued, I'm not blaming you. I just thought I was a burden to you for a long time. Maybe when I became stronger, I would have the right to look for you. The more power you hold, the more freedom you have. I remained silent, lost again in the chaos of my memories. That afternoon before I went home, I ran into Sarah downstairs. Crystal, did you know that Frank, the guy you bought 6 months ago, is now being sought by the Liu family for a huge reward? We were supposed to be friends, but for some reason, the look on her face made me wary. I frowned. I just sponsored a young actor. I don't know anyone from the Liu family. Sarah said nothing more and watched me leave. When I got home, I found out why my mom had called me back so suddenly. She and my dad had gotten addicted to online gambling. They had not only lost all their savings but had also mortgaged our house and were now millions in debt. My dad, still not ready to give up, had followed the person who got them into it abroad and had been out of contact ever since. My mom threw herself at my feet, begging me to save him. It was the height of summer, but standing in our empty house, I felt a sudden, chilling cold. I thought I had a happy life, a perfect family, but it could all be destroyed so easily. I locked my mom in the house, cut the internet, and took away all her communication devices. Then I went to negotiate with the people who held the mortgage. I sold everything I could, but I was still hundreds of thousands of dollars short. It was then that Sarah called again, telling me that Frank had been found by his family. I rushed to the hospital but was stopped outside his room and handed a check for $300,000. After that, I graduated from college and, to pay off the remaining debt, I entered the entertainment industry and started acting. You asked why I got into acting when I studied art history. It's because the money is fast, and I needed. Before I could finish, a strong force from behind pulled me into an embrace, and I was completely enveloped in his arms. Frank rested his chin on the top of my head. His usually cool voice was now thick with emotion, almost a sob. I'm sorry. Looking in the mirror at his arms wrapped around me, I asked softly, what are you sorry for? Frank's voice grew hoarse. You went through so much, and I didn't even know. His eyes were a little red. My old self would have probably gotten angry, yelled at him, and demanded to know why he didn't come looking for me the second he remembered. Why he didn't acknowledge me in front of Sarah. But now, I didn't have the energy to care about any of that. At least that $300,000, meant to keep me quiet, had helped me get through the worst of it. 4 years is a long time. I never found my dad. I kept my mom locked up at home. At first, I gave her a phone, but she couldn't control herself and started gambling again. The time I had to bail her out of the police station, I almost gave up on her completely. But in the end, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I took her phone away again and went to see her once a week, leaving her just enough money for groceries. When she would curse at me, calling me an ungrateful daughter and wishing I would die, I would grip her shoulders and tell her, I could have left you to disappear with Dad, you know that? If you gamble again, I'll kill you, and we'll die together. In the reflection of her eyes, I saw my own disheveled hair and twisted expression. My mom seemed to be scared into submission and became much more obedient after that. Snapping back to the present, I instinctively leaned back a little, but Frank just held me tighter. He told me that his memories of me didn't come back all at once. They resurfaced slowly over a long period, replacing the false ones. Sarah and I never had anything between us. From the first second I woke up in the hospital, I knew she wasn't you. She's a completely different person from you. A lot has happened in these 4 years. The Liu family situation is complicated and not easy to control. My mother didn't bring me back because she actually wanted me to have the family fortune. She wanted me to clear all the obstacles for her favorite younger son, and then hand everything over to him. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. But unfortunately for them, their plan failed. They'll both be spending the rest of their lives in prison. As for the Liu family, he pushed my hair back and placed a kiss on my cheek. It was a light, tentative kiss. When he felt no resistance, the kiss traveled to my lips, becoming a wet, lingering heat. I missed you so much. A haze of desire clouded Frank's eyes, but he suppressed it, looking at me brightly in the mirror. Now, the entire Liu family, including me, is yours. If you don't like the entertainment industry, if you don't want to act anymore, you can quit anytime. Are you kidding me? When Director Vance heard this, he nearly jumped out of his skin. I finally find the perfect actress, and now you're telling me she's just going to quit? Frank looked at him. This isn't a good place or a good profession. I placed my hand on his and said to the director, don't listen to him. I've accepted the role, and I'm going to see it through. The press conference ended with Director Vance publicly announcing a change in the female lead. Art before ethics. I simply cannot entrust my most cherished work to an actor of such low moral character, he said to the cameras. But fortunately, I've contacted Laura Liu, who has already won 3 International Best Actress awards, and she has agreed to take on the role. Laura, her last name was Liu, too? I thought about the conversation between Director Vance and Frank that night, and suddenly, it all started to make sense. The role was never meant for her. Frank just sped up his plans recently, and his moves were getting a little obvious, so he threw her a bone to distract her and keep his mother and brother calm, Vance explained later. As for Laura, well, she's Frank's half-sister. Not many people know that. When he mentioned Laura's name, Director Vance's ears turned a little red. The press conference was over, and after a brief chat, we all got into our respective cars. Frank suddenly told the driver to go to the hospital. I turned to him sharply. He took a shallow breath, as if in pain. It was a hassle, getting my mother taken away by the police took some doing. She managed to stab me before she left. Seeing the stern look in my eyes, he looked up and gave me a reassuring smile. But the wound isn't deep. Your protective charm blocked some of it. Crystal, after all this time, the gift you gave me is still protecting me. I wasn't buying it. I just stared at him. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see you as soon as possible. Frank's voice softened as he apologized, but the smile on his face only deepened. He looked genuinely happy. I mimicked his tone from the car that night and said coolly, Frank, I don't like hearing you apologize. He reached out and took my hand. I know. It won't happen again. I went to the hospital with Frank and finally saw the wound near his chest. It was nearly 4 inches long. The flesh was torn, and it had only been hastily bandaged. The doctor removed the blood-soaked gauze and cleaned, stitched, and redressed the wound. There was no anesthetic, but Frank barely even flinched. After the doctor left, it was just the 2 of us in the room. I asked him, have you been through this kind of thing a lot? He didn't answer, just blinked at me. The silence stretched on for a moment before he finally spoke. You weren't like this before. The Crystal from 4 years ago would have been cursing me out while kissing me. I think we both felt it. Even though neither of us blamed the other, and there was no one standing between us anymore. Those 4 years had still created a chasm between us. He paused, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, and took my hand. I really wish you could see me as the same Frank from 4 years ago. I like it that way. Before he could finish, I stepped forward, leaned down, and kissed him. The identical citrus scent on both of us, the antiseptic smell of the hospital, the scent of medicine and blood, it all mingled together, crushed between our lips. Like this? I mumbled against his mouth. But we're completely different people now. Will you still willingly, forever, obey my every word? I didn't ask the question out loud. But Frank, as if he could read my mind, said softly, of course. You'll always be my master. The kiss was long and passionate. In the end, avoiding his wound, I straddled his waist and pushed him down onto the hospital bed. He guided my hand, showing me the scars, big and small, that littered his body. The news only ever reported his successes. It never mentioned the dangers and hardships he had faced. These are all from the last 4 years. Some are from my mother, some from other family members, and some from enemies. He pressed his cheek against my palm, rubbing it gently. But the good news is, they all ended up 1,000 times worse off than me. Honestly, I was never scared through all of it. In fact, every time I got hurt, I would remember more about you. Maybe this was the price I had to pay for not remembering you sooner. Soon, I saw news about Sarah. She had been arrested for corporate espionage and economic crimes. Her Best Actress award was also re-investigated, found to have been obtained illegitimately, and revoked. Her reputation was in tatters, and Frank's wasn't much better. I, on the other hand, suddenly became famous. I even gained a lot of righteous fans. The internet was full of witty comments about how blind Frank was, how he couldn't even recognize his own savior. Crystal spent $150,000 on you. Do you have any idea how much money that is? You better pay her back. Damn, if I were her, I'd make him pay me back 100 times over. At least 15 million. Just looked up Crystal Lynn's resume. She's the definition of a hard-working grinder. A true workhorse in the entertainment industry. Frank Liu, the fake one, gets to be the female lead, and you let the real savior play the fourth lead? Unbelievable. I asked Frank, are you sure you don't want to clear this up? He shook his head, holding me in his arms, and focused on kissing me. The more they criticize me, the more they'll like you. It's a good thing for you. I didn't say anything more. His fingers deftly slipped under my shirt, pressing against the most sensitive part of my waist and slowly moving up. I trembled with pleasure, no longer caring about the outside world. In the white wave of my thoughts, I heard Frank whisper in my ear with a light laugh. It was just like 4 years ago. Are you satisfied, Master? Director Vance's new film took 3 months to shoot, and Frank visited the set almost every day. During that time, on a couple of days when I didn't have any scenes, he went home with me. Our big family house had been sold long ago. My mom now lived in a small one-bedroom apartment. When she saw me and Frank, she stood up nervously. Why don't you stay for lunch? I'll cook for you. That's okay, I said, holding up a hand to stop her. I just came to check on you. I have to leave soon. She looked at me, a hurt expression on her face. I forced myself to be strong and took an old-fashioned cell phone out of my bag. You can make calls and send texts. I'll pay the bill every month. If you need anything, use this to contact me. She took it, looking it over and over. Can I call you when I miss you? Yes. I have to go now. I stood up abruptly and walked out the door. The moment I closed it, the tears started to fall. Frank held me tightly. I buried my face in his chest and whispered, I can't be soft. I can't. The last time I was soft and gave her a phone and money, she just started gambling again. He patted my back comfortingly. It was my fault before. I remembered too late and let you suffer so much. It will never happen again. He had his assistant arrange a new place for my mom to live and hired people to watch her 24/7 to make sure she didn't come into contact with anyone or anything related to gambling. Once everything was settled, Frank drove me back to the set. I was about to go in when he tugged on my skirt. He whispered, I have to leave on a business trip tonight. I'll be back in a week. Will you kiss me goodbye? I turned around and looked into his eyes under the moonlight. After a few seconds of silence, I stepped forward, grabbed the front of his shirt, and pushed him against the car door, kissing him with a sense of urgency. He stroked my hair, his neck straight, and surrendered to it all. Is your wound healed? I finally asked, my voice hoarse, my lips by his ear. Because if it is, I'm not going back tonight. Outside, clouds obscured the moon. Only the scattered lights of the city seeped into the room. Even without the lights on, there was a soft glow. In the interplay of light and shadow, Frank's chiseled face looked even more handsome, filled with a seductive charm. He knelt before me, his head tilted up, his legs slightly apart, the fabric of his slacks pulled taut. Sweetheart, step on me. I gently stroked his face, which was filled with a mix of pain and pleasure. The next second, he grabbed my ankle. He leaned down, and a trail of hot kisses traveled up the taut line of my calf, leaving a clear, wet path. Finally, he stopped at that intimate spot, his lips lingering, applying more pressure. I couldn't help but bite my lip, grabbing a handful of his hair and pulling him away slightly. Crystal. His eyes were misty with desire. I'm thirsty. Give me everything. I'll take good care of you, just like before. His kisses, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, fell on my lower stomach. As my thoughts began to drift, fragments of the past flashed through my mind again. During my time on set, I had gotten to know Laura. Contrary to what I had imagined, she was very warm and approachable. After we became closer, she told me about the Liu family. A place like that is as messy as it gets. I hate Frank's mom, but I have to admit, Frank and I are both victims. We both wanted to escape the family. The only difference is, I ran away on my own, and he. She paused. He was kicked out by his mother. I completely understand his feelings for you. When he lost his memory and was out on his own, everyone in the family knew. They were all waiting to see him fail. If it weren't for you, he probably wouldn't have survived. Don't overthink it. When you grow up in a family like ours, money and fame are all meaningless. The only thing you ever want to hold on to is the people who matter. After saying that, she looked out the window. A light rain had started to fall. Director Vance was already waiting for her with an umbrella. What are you thinking about? Frank's voice, thick with desire, was right next to my ear. I snapped out of it, shook my head, and looked into his eyes. I was thinking about you. After a moment of silence, he suddenly picked me up and carried me into the bedroom. I buried my face in his shoulder and bit down hard. Frank let out a muffled groan, his movements becoming more intense. In the dim light, his eyes were like silken threads, weaving a web of seduction around me. Bite down here, too. Please, master. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, its light bathing the blooming roses below. Molten moonlight dripped onto the heart of the flowers, causing them to tremble violently. The aching emptiness was finally, completely filled. I clung to Frank, and the next second, his hot kisses covered me. I will make all your wishes come true, he said, his voice hoarse, his gaze on me incredibly serious. Don't ever leave me again. We both wanted to go back to the past, but we couldn't. All we could do was hold on to the future more tightly. I hugged him back and nodded firmly. Okay.